Welcome to the Modern Tele project. First of all, I'd like to thank Rob Chapman for actually coming up with a competition like this. It's not every day you get asked to showcase your custom design ideas. What I'm going to do in the next few minutes is not only show you pictures of the guitar design, but also talk about the specs and the approach towards building this guitar. So this build is about getting together a Telecaster with 24 frets, a bolt-on neck, but a special kind of bolt-on neck, ebony or maple fretboard, a single-sided arch top, the combination of a maple neck with a mahagony body and a maple top, EMG 89 bridge pickup and a EMG SA single coil for the neck pickup, black Schaller mini locking tuners with a 16:1 ratio, a black Gotoh humbucker telebridge with Graphtec String Saver Classics saddles, and a Graphtec Black Tusq XL nut, and factory Schaller security pins. Now, some of you are going to say, a 24 fret Telecaster, doesn't that look a bit off? And I've looked into this. There are a few manufacturers who tried 24 fret Telecasters before, such as ESP with the original Eclipse, or Carvin with their own take on the Telecaster, and even Fender with the HM Telecaster design. But most of them have this space-age look to it, or have free-floating tremolos, which I despise. So I found this picture of a Telecaster with a baritone 24-fret neck, and it doesn't look off in any way, and it's still got this classic look to it. Now let's talk about my first encounter with a Telecaster. When I first picked up a Telecaster, and I've dreamed about this, and I had certain expectations, I was fairly disappointed. It had this huge neck and this bulky neck joint and a vintage bridge that nearly cut open my right hand when I muted the strings, and I thought to myself, who would want to play a guitar like this? Now, don't get me wrong, there are very talented guitar players using Telecasters, starting with Keith Richards, John 5, and lots of country music guitar players, and they always seem to be blazing fast. But I think they just go for a certain look or a sound rather than a feeling. I know for a fact that John 5 is actually collecting Telecasters, and he has a vintage collection. Keith Richards actually used a Telecaster as a weapon. He defended himself on stage, so it has this iconic look to it, but it still disappointed me. And I forgot about Telecasters for a long time, and I played power strats, you know, ESP and Charvel and Ibanez. And so I have this certain expectation of a guitar. If I pick one up, I instantly know if I'm going to play it for a longer time or just going to put it back right into the guitar stand. And now that Rob Chapman actually has this competition, I feel the need to share my vision of the perfect Telecaster. But it's not only just one guitar design, it's actually 4. But I'll get back to that later on. The cool thing about Fender guitars has been the fact that you can rebuild a guitar. You can slap on a new neck, you can change the body, the pickups, and have a whole new guitar. And the problem with bolt-on necks is even newer designs like the Jim Root Telecaster, they have this angled neck joint, and it's still not right for me. I mean, I'm used to neck-through guitars, and there simply is no such thing as a neck pocket that gets in your way. But the downside of having a neck-through guitar is you can't fix it. So if you break your neck or your frets are not fixable anymore, you can basically throw away a guitar that you've been loving. So I've come across a design that gives you the ultimate upper fret access, but you can still swap out necks. The Thornton inset neck actually has its bolts under your pickguard. So if you look at the back side of your guitar, you have this clean look with no heel at all, and you can still swap out a neck by just removing a pickguard and turning 4 screws. What I've loved about the ML1 is the fact that it had an ebony fretboard. You usually don't get ebony fretboards in that price range because it's a material that's hard to work on and it's not really cheap. So my idea is to initially come out with a neck that has a maple fretboard and a neck that has an ebony fretboard. And since it's so easy to swap out necks, people could just order whichever they like. Another thing about original Telecasters is the strings behind the nut. Some people use it for bends, but I think they're really too damn high. And there's this company that actually makes angled Telecaster style necks. It has this 9.5 degree angled headstock, and it still looks original. That's what I try to do. I try to keep the original look. I'd like to ask you to think about what is the first thing that comes to your mind once you pick up a new guitar. So you're done checking for the quality, you're done checking every little detail about it, and you're starting to play it. What is the first thing that you actually feel? In my opinion, that would be the neck. So how are the frets? How are the fret edges? How is the finish? How is the profile? Those are things that are quite important to me. I'm sure a lot of you have played a new guitar with a painted neck, and it's very sticky. The sweat gets in the way, and it's not as fast as an oiled neck or unfinished neck. Another important thing are neck profiles. There are lots of people fighting over them. 59 baseball bat style, 60s slim taper necks, Fender V style necks, and it's like war going on online. But I've never met someone that actually said, I can't for the love of God use ESP thin U neck profiles. I love them. They're not too thick and they're not too thin like Wizard ones. And they still feel like real necks and not a toy. Frets are also very important to a lot of people. And I just go for jumbo frets because they're easy to play for me because I use thicker strings. The nut itself, I've been using Nirvana compensated nuts on my LTD guitars, but they kind of get in the way with thick strings. They just don't fit in there right and you don't want to mess with it. So I'd go for a graphite nut that is actually filed for thicker strings. The guitar body itself is something quite special, and it's something that should stand out. I don't like flat top guitars because to me it makes it look cheap. I also don't like how my arm rubs against flat top guitars, so that's why I always prefer a carved top. Since I've noticed that lots of people hate abalone binding, let's just keep it classy with a creme binding. But I also wanted to have a pickguard, and it's very hard to get a pickguard on a carved top. You can do it like on a Les Paul, but I don't think that would be appropriate. Since I like lightweight guitars, the body will be carved out, so it will be a hollow body with a maple top, and the F-hole just underlines the classic looks of a Thinline Telecaster. the finish is one of the most important things about a guitar. And I've noticed every time I looked at a Gibson and an Epiphone, I would go for the Gibson without even knowing it. And that's because it had a nitro paint. I would come out with a black and a sunburst color with a nitro top coating, which is the cheapest way and most effective way to get the same looks. The bridge itself is actually meant to keep the original look but add a very comfortable feeling. Now I know that a lot of people do not like EMG pickups and their image is a metal image. Truth is, there are some jazz players using EMG pickups, and I've learned that yes, the output is compressed, but I really enjoy how they sound in all my guitars, because I don't have to really adjust a lot on my amps. And I'm not saying they all sound the same, but they certainly have a certain output that I still like. So the EMG 89 is actually a 85 and a SA in one case. Now we could experiment with the coils facing towards the bridge, because there are two versions out there. One where the SA is facing towards the neck and towards the bridge. So we could change the position of the single coil in the bridge. And since you can split the 89, you need a coiltap. And I also like to point out that most of my guitars have very cheap pots. So if I roll down the volume just a little bit, there's nothing. It just does nothing. And when I turn it down a little bit more, suddenly it stops. There's no sound. And I really hate that about the pots, so it has to be CTS high quality pots. I also never use the tone pots, so I would go for 2 volume, so you can use one as a kill switch actually. Just turn one down and use the toggle as a kill switch. Most guitar brands use different strap pins, and I really hate that because I have to get Schaller security pins every single time I buy a new guitar. The Schaller mini locking tuners are the perfect combination of classic looks and modern technology. They've never let me down, so I think that's the way to go. Now, about 13 minutes later, you know how I feel about Telecasters and how I would change them, what kind of hardware I would use, and how my classic looking Telecaster with a modern feel would be like. And I've seen some other submissions, and they're often just Telecasters, and I think it's time for a Telecaster from Rob Chapman. It's just the logical next step. We've had the Explorer, the Strat, and the Les Paul now. So thanks for checking out my video, and sorry for my accent.